Reality warpers. Real pieces of work, aren't they? It's one thing when an anomaly is all claws and fangs like SCP-682, or if their attack of choice is snapping necks like SCP-173. But it is an entirely different story if an anomaly can turn the air you breathe into chocolate pudding, or shove you into a pocket dimension that looks almost like our own reality, except everyone is just a walking, talking pile of spiders. See what I mean? Reality warpers, real handfuls. Though, of course, not all reality warpers are created equal. Some are relatively weak, only affecting the world around them in a mild, ambient fashion. Others can rattle whole dimensions with their tremendous power. The same also goes for morality. Some reality warpers are loving and benevolent, such as SCP-343, the kindly, old, all-powerful being known to some as God. And some are pure evil beings who want nothing more than to use their immense power to sow chaos and misery among everyone else. And personally, we can't think of a better example of the latter than Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls. This demonic Dorito wants nothing more than to take over our dimension and rebuild it in his image of absolute insanity. So naturally, we started wondering, if these two reality-warping titans, SCP-343 and Bill Cipher, ever came to blows, who would win? We were so curious, in fact, that we fired up the Anomatron 6000, our state-of-the-art simulation supercomputer, to see how exactly the two might meet and how their epic battle would play out. Who do you think would take the coveted W on this one? Let us know down in the comments, along with any other out-of-universe what-if situations you'd love to see. But in the meantime, let's fire up the machine. Be warned, folks, it's gonna get weird. The date was July 12th, 2013. For SCP-343, it had started out as a relatively normal day. He'd spent the night playing solitaire on the astral plane before warping back into his humanoid containment cell by morning, leaving the Foundation none the wiser. After all, he was really here voluntarily. If the Foundation had truly wanted to try to confine him here, they were welcome to give it a go, but it would be about as effective as trying to catch a whisper in a butterfly net. While God had come to this place to experience the joyful illusion of giving up control, it truly was little more than an illusion to him. If he wanted to, he could exterminate the SCP Foundation in less than an afternoon, then retire to Burger King for a Whopper. So really, they're all just lucky he is a benevolent being, more interested in hanging out than dispensing wrath on those he perceived as insolent. That was Old Testament him. He'd done a lot of soul-searching and growth since then. It'd been at least a millennium since he'd smote anyone for that matter, and the last guy really had it coming. However, today was going to be a little different. God knew that something was going to happen today. He sensed a great source of energy emerging, something dark and malevolent. He sighed and he closed his eyes for a moment, focusing himself. He knew whatever the nature of this threat, it would fall upon him to face and destroy it. How irritating. He was hoping to finally binge Stranger Things today. Elsewhere in Site-19, things seemed to be inordinately peaceful. There hadn't been any containment breaches or new anomalies brought in. There hadn't been any attacks from rival groups of interest. Dr. Bright hadn't even done anything stupid or started any fires. To borrow an old cliché, it was quiet, too quiet. Perhaps the only person who wasn't having a relatively mellow day was Security Officer Frederick Simmons, a mid-level guard who'd been stationed at Site-19 for 4 years now. He just wasn't really feeling himself today. The work didn't bother Simmons, emotionally at least. Typically, even after seeing rather traumatic things or being in near-death situations while in containment breaches, it hadn't left any lingering effects. But lately, he'd been having the strangest dreams. It always played out the same way. Shortly after going to sleep, he'd open his eyes in a strange multicolored void surrounded by bizarre, seemingly random floating objects, none of which seemed to have any real relevance to him or his life. And just when he'd begin to question it, the other recurring element of the dream would occur. Out of the shimmering oil-slick rainbow of mind-boggling colors, a strange being would suddenly emerge. A glowing golden triangle, almost like a drawing of a pyramid, the Eye of Providence, with a stovepipe hat, a little bow tie, thin black arms and legs, and most notable of all, a single large eye with a slit pupil staring out from the center. The eye almost seemed to have a strange hypnotic quality to it. Simmons felt bewitched whenever he looked into it. He wasn't afraid, quite the opposite actually. For reasons he couldn't understand, this strange creature from the world of dreams seemed like a good friend of his. He said,
Well, if it isn't my number one guy, the Fredmeister, in the house. I've missed you. Have you missed me? Put her there, good buddy.
The entity extended his hand and Simmons shook it. The Foundation guard could feel a strange tingling sensation jolting down his arm. The first time Simmons had encountered the entity, he'd told him his name, Bill Cipher, and he told him how incredibly important it was that Simmons kept their little nighttime meetings a secret. In exchange, Bill was here to listen. Simmons would spend his time in the mindscape pouring out his worries and frustrations with his daily work, as Bill paid impeccable attention. The strange little dream entities seemed fascinated by the work Simmons did, all the peculiar and wondrous anomalies he guarded at Site-19. But to Simmons, it was all just boring work. Zombie creating supernatural plague doctors and immortal men with metal limbs lose their shine after you see them day in, day out for years on end. Frankly, Simmons needed a day off, but he'd already used up all his PTO when he'd gotten the flu earlier that year. He just didn't know what to do. Luckily for him, Bill had a solution. Bill, as it turned out, had a fancy little ability. He could occupy the body of a human being and operate it for them. Bill could take the wheel while Simmons took a load off in the mindscape. How hard could standing around pretending to look busy at the SCP Foundation really be? As Bill explained the offer to him, Simmons couldn't really see any flaws in his reasoning. After all, Bill was a friend. Why would he have any ill will towards him? With that, he shook hands with the bizarre supernatural triangle and felt the sudden rough sensation of having his consciousness ripped from his body, only for Bill to slither in and take his place. The new Simmons, the Bill-occupied Simmons, opened up his demonic yellow eyes and grinned. He gave a demented laugh to Simmons' floated, disembodied soul.
Oh, man!
He said, wiping away a tear of laughter with Simmons' finger.
With your body, I can use the SCP Foundation's technology to take over the multiverse. See ya, sucker!
And with one last demented chuckle, Bill left for work at the SCP Foundation, with Simmons being the latest in his long line of meat puppets. After arriving at Site-19, he sneaked through the facility, knowing exactly where he needed to be. You see, Bill is a native entity of the second dimension, the world of flat shapes, but he's able to access the minds of beings in the third dimension, like us, through the medium of the mindscape, rather than the physical realm. Bill's life goal has always been to find a way to permeate and take over the third dimension, turning it into his personal playground. All he needed was the right anomaly to bring him forth into our world. In this case, a little anomalous device favored by Dr. Kane Pathos Crow, SCP-158, also known as the Soul Extractor. While Dr. Crow left to the courtyard for his evening walkies, the being that most people assumed was Fred Simmons secreted himself into SCP-158's containment chamber and locked the door behind him. He didn't have much time. He'd need to do this perfectly if he wanted a real chance at taking over the universe. He was amused by the irony, at the least. The fact that in order to take over, he needed to sneak into the midst of the people most likely to destroy him. Still, where's the fun in life with no risk? At SCP-158's control console, he inputted the data to Soul Extraction and set a timer. However, there was one difference between this and the usual procedures performed with the Soul Extractor. There was no containment receptacle on the other end. Whatever was extracted would just be released into the world. And this was exactly what Bill was counting on. He laid Simmons' body down on the gurney and watched with glee as the robotic arm lowered towards him. It reached into his chest and pulled out the essence of one three-sided threat to reality, Bill Cipher. One quick journey through the bowels of the machine later, the nightmare scenario had come to pass. Bill floated around the room, dragged into physical reality. He let out a long, conceited cackle and spun his cane around. This was going to be fun. Elsewhere in the facility, alarms were going off and guards were deploying. Nobody was meant to be in Containment Chamber 158, so how was the Soul Extractor currently operating? This couldn't possibly end well. Bill, on the other end, was having a wonderful time. He was pondering all the different ways he could make the drab clinical corridors of the SCP Foundation into his vision of perfect weirdness. Maybe he'd turn all the researchers into mice and turn Site-19 into a giant maze to run them through. Maybe he'd turn the air into farts and release winged beasts from the Hell Dimension to ravage humanity. Maybe he'd go out into the parking lot and key everyone's cars. Oh, the diabolical possibilities were endless. As he floated out into the hall, his fantasizing was interrupted by a group of Foundation security operatives wielding assault rifles. They entered an attack formation and trained their rifles on him before opening fire. Bill just found himself laughing again. The gunfire just tickled.
Wow, you guys are hilarious!
Bill said between fits of laughter.
But wait, I can think of a better way to make you even funnier.
He snapped his fingers and suddenly the guards were transformed. Instead of the serious first line of defense for the SCP Foundation, they were now a gang of literal clowns straight from the circus, holding balloon animals molded into the shapes of assault rifles. They giggled and threw pies at each other. Bill was right. This did make them even funnier. And he was just getting started, turning this Foundation snooze fest into a party of cosmic proportions. Bill began running a rampage of weirdness across the site. Essentially being the ultimate cosmic troll, he decided he'd simply bother every single anomaly he could with his demonic antics. First, he appeared in SCP-096's chamber and pulled a brown paper bag over his head, with the words "Ugliness lies within" written on the front. And just for fun, he then teleported the temperamental beast to a nearby Amish community. It quickly became enraged when a gust of wind blew the bag off its head, and a man named Jebediah saw its face. It then killed several others, also named Jebediah, during the rampage. Bill thought it was hilarious. He then released SCP-682 into Site-19, and just to annoy the creature into further violence, he stuck an indestructible party hat on the monster's head. No matter how hard 682 tried, it couldn't remove the party hat. This caused it great frustration, which it took out on any Foundation staff it happened to find in the area. It had fulfilled Bill's expectations wonderfully, but his quest for amusing carnage didn't end there. Next, he went to bother SCP-049, the Plague Doctor, who was in the process of doing surgery on a Foundation-provided dead goat. With a snap of his fingers, Bill transformed the Plague Doctor's surgical tools into colorful Play-Doh cutting tools. Needless to say, the supernatural surgeon was less than pleased. He was about as annoyed as Dr. Clef was when Bill turned his favorite shotgun into a bouquet of flowers, then sealed his feet into the floor. Or how vexed Dr. Gears was when Bill turned his plain beige necktie into a considerably more loud and colorful tie. People there at the time reported hearing Dr. Gears say, "I just don't think that was necessary." Oh, and he also did some more minor acts of malice. He filled the break room with an army of flesh-eating zombies. He made a moat filled with molten lava around the site that prevented anyone from escaping from his reign of terror. And he even covered all the walls in cognito-hazardous doodles that instantly drove any weak-minded human who saw them into complete gibbering madness. It was clear this reality-warping nightmare needed to be stopped before he got bored of playing with his new Foundation toys and decided to go remodel the universe in his own image. Thankfully, there was one anomaly on site who was up to the task. Bill was treating himself to another evil laugh in the Site-19 canteen when something peculiar happened. He looked down to see a man in what looked like a tunic with graying hair and a beard. He walked with a peculiar kind of calmness, his face blank. Why wasn't this guy panicking? Was he stupid? Bill would seemingly need to teach this guy a thing or two about fear.
Hey, Gramps! Don't know if it's escaped your attention, but I've been giving this place an extreme makeover. Did you forget to put on your glasses this morning, or are you just that senile?
The stranger remained calm as could be. He replied with a voice that was measured as it was deep.
"Now, Bill, let's not resort to name-calling. That's just childish, don't you think?"
Bill's single eye widened at this.
Wait, hold up. How did you know my name?
Bill asked, irritated.
Are you a friend of the Time Baby or something?
He floated over and began circling the stranger, hoping to intimidate him. Much to Bill's frustration, it didn't appear to be working.
"I know lots of things, Bill. Lots of things,"
the stranger replied.
That's my line!
Bill screeched, turning red.
Who do you think you are?
The stranger gave a quiet, reserved chuckle that infuriated Bill.
Oh, personally, I just like to think of myself as a humble craftsman, watching his beautiful creation play out.
He said.
But I suppose some of the people around here like to call me God.
Bill didn't like this. This whole universe was going to be his, and he certainly didn't appreciate some insolent old man acting like he ran the roost around here. Bill would give him an education in who was really holding the reins, and it would be the kind of education that left scars, if it left anything at all. He extended his spindly black arms and released bolts of lightning against the stranger, who simply continued to smile as the electricity rippled around him, seemingly causing no effect.
Are you done?
The stranger asked. Bill laughed, hoping to hide his irritation.
I'm just getting started,
he bellowed. With a thunderous roar that shook the very foundations of Site-19, Bill began to grow and shift. No longer a silly little triangle, he became a huge red pyramid of pure nightmares, covered in glowing golden arms and teeth, with long black tongues drooping out of each level. It was the most terrifying and demonic form in his entire arsenal, and yet he was astonished to find that the stranger still didn't seem to show any kind of fear.
Very impressive, Bill,
the stranger said, sounding almost bored.
But I think you might be trying a little too hard.
Oh, that does it. Bill would simply have to destroy him. It was a matter of pride now. He raised several of his huge golden fists and began pounding down on the comparatively tiny humanoid stranger. It was an assault so powerful that the ground began cracking around their feet, and yet it seemed that with almost no effort, the stranger was able to intercept and block every single blow. Naturally, Bill was infuriated. It was time to finally unleash the full breadth of his power on this beardy wise guy. He launched thunderbolts, fireballs, legions of giant mutant wasps, hailstorms, maelstroms, bubbles of pure madness, snakes made out of barbed wire, and even incredible coarse language. But despite it all, this man, the one who claimed people called him God, was utterly unfazed.
You can dish it out,
he said.
But let's see if you can take it.
Bill began to laugh.
What the heck's that supposed to mean? You can't.
God snapped his fingers, and Bill was gone, vanished. And with a flick of his wrist, all the damage and transformations that Bill had performed had disappeared. It was as though the demonic triangle had never even been there in the first place. Though Dr. Bright, who was acting site director at the time, had some Scranton reality anchors turned on around the perimeter just to be safe. You can never be too careful with reality warping demons after all. Later that day, Dr. Bright approached God and asked him what he'd actually done with Bill. God chuckled and replied,
For a being of such immense power, he really had a rather childish mindset. So I sealed him away inside a children's cartoon where he couldn't do any further damage.
What was the cartoon? Dr. Bright asked.
A charming little Disney show called Gravity Falls,
God replied. Now go check out Your Questions for God Answered and SCP-096 versus SCP-343 for more of this singularly unique reality warper.